Hello and welcome to this video about box sizing in CSS. This is the third step in our CSS journey and the second module in our full HTML and CSS course. In this video, we're going to talk about box sizing, which is the base and underlying layer for many HTML style and properties. Alright, so I have the style.css here, which is currently empty, and then index.html references that CSS file. I'm going to collapse the sidebar and put the CSS in the side here so that we can see both at the same time. Inside HTML, let's go ahead and create a div element. For now, it's empty. And inside CSS, I'm going to select that div and add a couple of properties to style it. First, as we talked about in previous video, width is the first property that we will add and height is the next one. So 200 pixel for both width and height, and this is going to make it a square. And also we're going to add a background color to it to make it visible. Now I'm running this project on this port so I can see it here. There you go. So now you can see we have this text that we had here for h1 and then this empty div that we have styled it like this. If I go to the DevTools here, you can see it has 200 by 200 dimensions. There are a couple of properties that we need to talk about in order to understand the box sizing. First one is padding. In order to understand the padding, let's go ahead and add content inside the div. As an example, I'm going to create a h2 here and I say this is a card title. And then I'm going to create a p tag inside the div and I say this is the paragraph of the card, like that. So we have a div and then h2 and p inside that div. So if we take a look at the card, this is how it looks like right now. To showcase the padding, I'm gonna go ahead and say padding like 20 pixels, just like that. So we just say padding and 20 pixels. If we take a look at that, right now you can see the content and the text inside that div has some sort of padding or space between its borders. Now to showcase this properly, if you hover over the padding in the DevTools, it will show you the padding. You can see the text starts with 20 pixels of space. So if I change this, you can see how it changes. You can visually see that the padding is the space between the content inside the card or the box and its borders. Let's go back to our code and add the second property, which is called margin. 20 pixel for margin as well. The margin might not be visible right now, but if we hover over its property in DevTools, now you can see the margin. And you can see the margin is space outside of the border. So if we consider this border, padding is the space between the content and the border inside the box, like that, and margin is outside of that. So if we change this, you can see the whole box moves. And if I change the padding, you can see it's about the inside, and this top left border never changes the position for padding. So padding is about the inner space and margin is about outer space. Now what about this border? We talked about the outer and inner spaces, but what about the border? Well, we have styles for that as well. We can add a border. Now, in order to have the border, we need at least one property called border style. And if we set it to solid, this way, you can see this black line around the box. That's the border. So border style is solid. We can change its width as well, like border width 10 pixels. Like that. And we can also change its color, like border color. Let's go with blue, like that. So now we have the inner space, the border, and the margins around that. Cool. By the way, for border, we can also have a shorthand. We can say border 10 pixels solid blue. So this is the shorthand equivalent of all these three. I believe this is cleaner. So 10 pixels solid blue. We still have the same one. And for border, it's very easy. We can change it here as well. Like you can see, it's very handy, this DevTools here. And for the solid, we can change it to dashed. You can see the dashed looks like this. Border is not our focus right now. We're going to focus on, let's make it like this. Focus on the box sizing. So right now we see that the padding is about inner space, margin is outer space, and then we have the border. Cool. This is called the box sizing. The box sizing is about the content width and height of the whole content or the box. Then it's padding, then border, and then the margin. Now, to showcase this, the best place is DevTools again. If we go down for the styles, you can see the box model here in the DevTools. Now, this is the best example of visualizing the box model. Now you can see the content here has 200 by 200 pixel, and we set that because we set the width and height to 200. If I change this to something 260 by 200, if you go down, you can see it changes here. Then we have the padding, which is 20 pixels. So padding is 20 pixels. Then we have 10 pixels of border, and then we have 20 pixels of margin. Now you can clearly understand this box sizing. Now this applies to all elements. So here you can see we have this H2 that has margin for itself. So this is the default margin for the elements, and this comes from the browser styles. Browser has default styles for each one. As you remember in the previous video, we talked about the font size, and we said that browser sets the font size by default. And margin also is one of those styles that gets applied by default, and we can reset that if you want. Alright, so let's get back to the code and talk more about padding and margins. This padding that we have right here is just 20 pixel. When we set it to 20 pixels here, you can see it applies the 20 pixels to all sides, left, top, right, bottom, everywhere. Now, if we add 10 pixels here, the first one will get applied to the y-axis, and the second one is going to be the x-axis, or horizontal axis. So now you can see the top and bottom 20 pixels, and left and right has 10 pixels, because this one is about the horizontal axis or left and right, and this one is the y-axis or top and down. If we add another one like 5 pixel, the whole order will change. It will be top first, like a clock. It's going to be clockwise, starting from top. So top, right, bottom, and since we don't have left, it's gonna get picked by this one. So here you can see top, right, 10 pixel, bottom is 5 pixel, and left picks up the right one, the same axis. And we can actually specify that as well. So now it's gonna be top, right, bottom, left. So 20, 10, 5, 3. You can see 20, 10, 5, 3, top, right, bottom, left. So that's the way we can add padding in shorthand. And this is the shorthand. We can comment this and add like padding right. You can see 20 pixels. And add padding, we can add padding bottom and add 10 pixels. Now you can see that the right and bottom have padding. We can do it like this, or we can use the shorthand, which is cleaner. This is way more cleaner. And we can do the same for the margin as well. So if I copy this and paste it here, we can do it like this for margin. You can see the margin here has 20, 10, 5, 3. With one shorthand, we can change it here. And as you can see for the border, we also have this shorthand here as well. That's almost it about the padding and border. You can check out and read more about them inside the reference website. And actually here you can see I have visualized box model with the text. You can read more about the content, padding, border, and margin here as well. The next topic that we're going to talk about is called box sizing. So if you remember, we had 200 by 200 for example for the width and height of the content. And then we had 3 pixels and 10 pixels on the padding, and then 10 pixels of the border on each side, and then 3 and 10. So first of all, let's go ahead and make the padding and margin 20 pixel on all sides. So this way it's gonna get easier for us to calculate. Now box sizing says that if you add width and height like this to the content, should that width and height contain the padding and the border as well, or just keep that for the content? So here you can see 200 by 200 is only for content, but our box is way more bigger than 200 by 200. As an example, 200 of width is only about this content here, and it's not about the whole box. What if we want to make the width and height for the entire box? So right now the whole box has 200 of width, 20 pixels of padding, and then 10 pixels of border. So its width is way more than 200 that we have set. Now to change this, we can say box sizing, and we have content box and border box values. And right now it's content box because the 200 by 200 gets applied to the content and not the padding or border. But we can change that to the border box. And as it says, box sizing will start from border, not the content. So now you can see the box is a little bit smaller. And then now you can see that the content is not 200 anymore. It's 140 because if you add the padding on each side, 20 and 20 and 10 and 10 for the border, it is gonna be 200 pixels. So if I select this here, you can see now it's 200 by 200. Beautiful. And remember that for the border size, margin has no effect because it's the outer space. It's not about our content. Now in the previous version, which was the content box, and the default value is actually content box, you can see it has 260 pixels of width and height. Now this is the box sizing concept, which is very important. And we can change that to change the entire layout and calculation of the CSS, which has a huge effect. Alright, so the last topic that we're going to talk about is called margin collapse. I'm going to remove the content of this div and actually duplicate it. Now I have two empty divs. And then also remove the margin, padding, everything. Just keep width and height. So let's add a background color of green this time. So here you can see we have two boxes. And one is at the top, one is at the bottom. Let's go ahead and add a margin to both. So margin 20 pixels. Just note that since I'm selecting the div, it's gonna select every div that we have. So it applies the styles to all. Alright, both have 20 pixels of margin. So 20 pixels of margin and 20 pixels of margin. As you can see, the top box has 20 pixels of margin at the bottom. So basically this box here, 20 pixels of bottom margin here, and for this bottom box, 20 pixels of top margin here. But as you can see, we only have 20 pixels. Why is that? It should be 40 pixels because 20 pixels for the bottom one and 20 pixels for the top box. But right now it's only 20. You can see it's only 20 pixels. The reason for that is called margin collapse. Of vertical margins between adjacent block level elements. It will collapse. So it says exactly that if you have margin bottom on one element and a margin top on the element directly below it, the actual space between them will be the larger of the two margins. Remember that the horizontal margins will not collapse. So if I change this and add a style here and call it margin 40 pixels, we add the margin 20 pixel here, but since the priority for the inline style is higher, this is gonna get picked up for this element. So if we check this one here, now you can see it has 40 pixels of margin. And for the top one, it has only 20. And the space between these two is not 60 pixels. It is 40 pixels, exactly like what you see here. Alright, so that is for today's video. We talked about box sizing, margin collapse, and the whole CSS box. In the next video, we're going to talk about the display property and position styling in CSS. See you there.